Welcome to the Wednesday Wind Down with Dan and Friends, the show that's for outdoor folks that want to be outdoors, are having a harder time doing it. People don't want to get together with their friends and drink adult beverages. So we're doing it remotely. So I'm the host, and tonight, I'm the host, and I'm Dan Conger. I should edit that, but I won't. I'll leave it in. And tonight, I am drinking my birthday beer, which is Cease and Desist. It's a Russian Imperial Stout. So,
yeah. Happy birthday.
That it is. Thank you much. Doug, would you please introduce yourself? And if you have a beverage, tell us about it.
I'm Doug Grover, and tonight I'm drinking an American whiskey.
Ooh, nice. Okay. Rich, Sandra, would you please?
Oh, I'm Sandra Grow, and I'm having Yogi bedtime tea.
Oh, okay. That's right. You're staying up past your bedtime for us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Rich Grow, and I'm drinking the world famous Costco margarita.
Wonderful. Okay, cool. So we brought in our esteemed guest tonight to talk about when a trip went off the rails. So the title of this is the ongoing concept of shit went wrong. And so it's always great to tell horror stories around a campfire, especially if you got a newbie around. You're like, oh my God, there I was hanging on the tree branch, and there's a bear hanging on my foot, and there's a rattlesnake that's about to jump on me. Like, did you die? Yeah, I did. But what's really important about these is what we took away from them. What did we learn from these, and how did it change our behavior? Or did it change your behavior? It was just like, oh man, that was hairy. End of story. Well, I want to do a little bit more with that one. So, Rich and Sandra are gonna share a story with us, that a trip that I was on. So I'll have a little bit of input on that one. So would you whoever wants to start first, if one of the two of you would kind of give us a little bit of an overview of what was going on with the trip?
So this was our first long backpacking trip post WBC.
It was.
And it was our first long trip with Dan, but we had done multiple warm up and shakedown hikes. And so we kind of had already fallen kind of into rhythm with each other, and we knew how to hike with each other, and we had kind of figured out where we fit. And this particular hike, we were going from Glacier Point in Yosemite, and we were supposed to finish, I think was it Devil's Post Pile? Somewhere
in the Mammoth area, yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where our trip, the itinerary was having us, and our incident happened well into the trip, probably day 5 of a 7-day trip, something like that. And it happened on Donahue Pass when we were leaving Yosemite and going into Inyo.
So it goes Yosemite, I think it goes Cathedral. You go into I just drew a blank where the grill is and where we did it. There's that you can do a food drop.
Tuolumne.
Thank you. Tuolumne. Goes to Tuolumne, and then it turns into Lyle Canyon, which is absolutely gorgeous. And then at the head of Lyle Canyon is Donahue Pass, and that's where you officially leave Yosemite, right? And Yosemite's kind of changed their permit structures now. It's so many permits per day go over Donahue Pass. That's how they monitor that. Okay, so it's about Donahue Pass. Got it.
So on the day before, when we were in Lyle Canyon, we had a rainstorm in the afternoon, and it's one that we knew was coming. And somebody had told us about this kind of like secret campsite. And so we ended up camping early that day because it was such a heavy downpour rain, but it was kind of short. So when it finished, we went out exploring it and enjoyed the rest of our day. And the next day we got an early start to go up and over Donahue so that we could make our mileage point for that day. And that's how our day started. And so we just started up the mountain, and our rhythm is we don't hike really close to each other. We will spread out from the first person that trip was with Mike. The fourth person, I would imagine, we had probably a half mile in between the first and last person. And we were just kind of like doing a slinky dance the day. And we got towards the top of Donahue. We hadn't quite made it over. And there's this beautiful, it's not a meadow. What would you call that, Dan?
I'd probably call it an alpine meadow. Yeah.
I would call it alpine something.
Yeah.
The grass was really short and it was spongy, and the stream that was going through it was kind of like, going in each direction and back and forth, and a lot of spaghetti turns, and it was beautiful up there. It was gobsmackingly beautiful, and I felt like it was like another world. I'd never seen anything like it before.
So Rich, were we making the time that we thought, or were we a little bit slower? Was there anything going on that day?
So we were making good time, and the every day the thunderhead, clouds would come up, and we'd watch them dissipate, just go away, and we had that one good rainstorm. But this day, we had lunch, we're laying on the rocks. Some of us were a little bit in a deeper sleep than others. And the clouds looked different. They were forming, instead of big, giant, puffy, it was those clouds. It's like, oh, what's going on there? And so we started to hustle up, and we started to pay a little bit more attention to that. So we gathered up and we started on our way to get to camp for that day.
We needed to get up and over Donahue Pass because this alpine area was right before the pass.
And if I remember, it kind of flattened out a little bit. So there wasn't really much climbing to do to speak of, but we were.
No, most of it was done.
Okay. So were we moving before we had thunder or rain, or did we start moving after that? Do you recall?
I feel like we'd noticed the clouds and we're like, ooh, those look really dark. And we were comparing it to the day before.
Okay.
And we had good rain, but that was all we had was we had gotten wet.
So then something happens. So it started raining? Well, wait.
Yeah.
What was the order?
It started raining, and we were all in our, we were all just like, well, we were in lounge mode from lunch. And so we put on our packs, and we don't have our jackets on. We're just kind of like walking. We're like, oh, wait, it's going to rain. We should put our jackets on. So we stopped, take our packs off, put our jackets on, and we're going, oh, wait, it's really raining. We probably should use our umbrellas too. And then, so we're walking with our packs and our jackets and our umbrellas. And then it's just like bonkers raining. Bonkers.
Okay, so it starts, the skies open up and it starts dumping on us.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had thunder.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Then there was the lightning. That's the oh shit moment, was the lightning.
The day the world stood still.
Okay, so we're near the top of Donahue Pass, and we realize that the ground is wet because it's raining. We're getting partway wet, and we've got lightning. That's some pretty serious shit. So
We were struggling to see the trail.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you right now and say, did you die?
No.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm going to point everybody to a great blog, Semi-Rad. He has a wonderful flow chart. It says, did you have an adventure? It says like, you saw a bear. Yes. Yes. Did the bear eat you? No. Did they chew on you? Yes. Did you die? No. You had an adventure. We obviously had an adventure because we're here to talk about it. Okay. So there's a couple of things that we could do in a situation once you're in that situation. So real briefly, I don't want to get too far out of time and pull from Doug's time, but there's a couple things we can do. Don't tell me what actually happened, but tell me a couple of other things that we could do.
So when we were hiking and the rain started to come and we saw the weather getting worse, we had an opportunity to stop before it got horrible.
So
we could have stopped and either ride it out or set up camp for the night.
So we could have stopped short of where we were. Okay. What's something else we could have done?
We could have benched up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And now I think what's interesting is we did two different things on this one. What did you do?
Well, we doubled back.
Okay.
When we had lightning strike between us. So
between the two of you?
No, between you and I.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So Mike was ahead. You were second.
So we had 2 and 2, and we had a lightning strike in the middle. Okay.
So Mike, we were going up, and I was concerned about Rich because he's usually the tail guy. And so I had stopped because I wanted to see him and I wanted to know everything was okay. You and Mike were going up and over the pass, and we were at this granite knoll. And I see Rich and I stand back, and then as we start to go, lightning struck as we were separating when you guys were continuing on and I was waiting. And
So you went back a ways and essentially hunkered down, but still, so not fully exposed, but definitely not at low elevation.
Right.
Okay.
We went down. So we had come up, and had almost made it over the top and started down, and we went down the trail probably 50 elevation feet, and then left the trail and went into a different area of tree line.
Okay. So Mike and I did something completely different. So we were separated by just a small distance. And once it started raining, we started running. Okay. And it was just more of a jog run. And then when we heard lightning, we ran, and we ran for a mile or two. And I remember at some point, as the trail filled up with water, we just started running through the water. So I was running through 6-8 inches of water, and it took a while before it was safe for you guys to come down. So we both did two different things, and it's hard to really know if either of them were the right things to do. I've got a list here, and I'll go over it in a second from Knowles, and I think it's really worth talking about. So, Rich, how's your behavior different on the trail after that incident?
Oh, it's huge. So, so I hate getting wet in the first place. And so torrential downpour, hated it. Lightning, learned to hate lightning more than water.
Okay, good. Good call.
So now the 5 trips since then, I'm always seeing, look, cloud. You need to start looking for shelter. What's this going to do? Oh, is my shoulder hurting? Hey, is it going to rain? So now I'm the weatherman.
And and the way I consider that is that's a once in a lifetime thing that I don't need to do it again, right? I've experienced it once.
Oh yeah, check.
Correct.
Check.
Done.
So from Knowles, the National Outdoor Leadership School, here's their tips on lightning safety in the backcountry. First one is time visits to high risk areas with weather patterns. So if you're going to go over a pass and you're prone to have summer thunderstorms, go over them early in the day. This one came a little bit earlier than typical, but it wasn't like it was 9 o'clock in the morning. So timing is one of them. The other one is find safer terrain if you hear thunder. Now, this was pretty, between hearing the thunder and strikes there was very little time. But so one of those is get down. The other one is get out of the exposed area. So to some degree, we each did something like that. Avoid trees. So as I was coming down, my brother and I were coming down, there was another group of people that had stopped under a clump of trees. We paused long enough to catch our breath and tell them and my brother, this is not a safe place to be. Keep going. This other one was really interesting, was avoid long conductors. And I had to really think about what this is, actually read their notes. And a long conductor, not for the most part, not something you're running in the backcountry. A chain link fence is a long conductor. Or what was the one, Sandra, that we talked about pre-show?
The cables on half dome.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think if there's any thunder anywhere, they kick people off. A long, wet climbing rope is a conductor, right? And then get in the lightning position. So the lightning position is crouched on the balls of your feet. So only your feet are touching, not your hands. Hands around, actually covering your ears, because the thunder or the lightning strike can be so loud.
It is loud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And mouth open.
What's that? Oh, mouth open.
Mouth
Okay.
open.
Yeah. So ultimately, what's interesting is most of these, with the exception of the lightning position, all of them don't get caught in that position. It's be careful beforehand. So, yeah. So we definitely treat weather a little differently, a little more cautiously. Awesome. Hey, thanks for sharing that. We appreciate it.
Well, you also had the misfortune of being on one of the passes that's more shallow, and that makes the risk bigger. You can't descend quickly on that pass.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
So there was one more interesting thing that we experienced. You know, you have you count, you hear the thunder and then lightning. So you count. We waited until the thunder was way far away. We started our track up and over. And as soon as we got on top, new storm, lightning striking. Yeah. So that was another thing I learned on that one. And it's just like, the weather, you once it's there, you have to watch it.
Right. Okay. So Doug's got a different style of story for us. Doug, where does your story take place?
Well, I'll say it's a little, there's some similarities between these. So this is a trip that I made 8 years ago in the Grand Canyon. I took a couple friends on a week-long trip, and I think this was night 5 of 6. And we arrived in our campsite, where we're in kind of a little thicket of trees. And we're there early, middle of the afternoon. We relax. We eventually, at dusk, start to do dinner. And about the time we start dinner, we start hearing some other voices. Great. It's always nice when you're away from civilization, especially when you have a fairly long hike, to occasionally run into some people and, have that kind of human contact.
But not 17 loud Boy Scouts, though.
No, not
okay. Just to be clear.
So we're 3 dudes in our early 50s, and we recognize, although we can't see these people, these are a collection of women who are probably early to mid 20s. So we're going to be very respectful. We don't do this full walk by the camp, pretending you're going to the restroom and say, oh, and then you chit chat. We just leave them alone. Just be respectful.
Okay.
Do our dinner. When dinner finishes, we clean up and we're getting ready to go to bed. And we on these hikes, we would normally spend half an hour to maybe 2 hours just sitting out in the evening looking at the stars.
Nice.
So as we're sitting there looking at the stars come up, and it's now dark, the women who are at this adjacent campsite, they laugh a little bit louder, and we smell marijuana smoke. So we understand that they are totally enjoying their backpack. So the next morning, we do our breakfast. And pack up and get ready to start hiking. And now we figure, well, now if we run into them, now this is kind of legitimate. We're not like hunting out people. So within a couple of minutes, we actually run into them, but not at a campsite, but they're near their campsite. And one of the gals kind of approaches us and utters the magic phrase, "We're not sure what we should do." And Matt, I'd love to write a book of all of the phrases that you're not supposed to hear in the backcountry. This is certainly one of them.
So, I think that goes into effect with, "Here, hold my beer."
Yes.
Or watch this.
That's another one. So she then provides the explanation that the previous evening, when it started to become dusk, at least one, maybe two of the members of their 6-person backpack group was having some difficulty maintaining pace. And so they separated their group about a half a mile before this camp location, so that 4 of them would go into camp and set up camp and get food ready, and the other 2 would eventually come in. Although
maybe
what happened in this case was the other 2 didn't arrive. So they're now wondering what it is the 4 should do, given that the other 2 haven't shown up yet.
Okay.
And they explain they'd probably, I don't remember exactly, but I'm assuming they hiked from the rim down to this campsite. Very long hike. It's probably 12 miles, very steep down. They have another 11 miles to hike this day. The Grand Canyon's permitted. They feel obligated to hike to the next permitted campsite that's on their permit. And they're struggling with this. We need to hike 11 miles, but we're missing 2 of our friends. And they're not really sure what they should do.
So we're going to pause right there. So I think we're at the crux of the problem here is you've hiked, you're getting ready to leave. This other group hiked in, spent the night. They're contemplating leaving, but they're missing 2 people out of 6. They don't know where they were last night. They don't know where they are right now. And they're asking a stranger, what should I do? Okay. So don't tell us what they actually did, but let's talk about some things that they could have done or you could have done, however you want to play it. Your call.
Well, I'll tell you what I would do in a similar circumstance. So a little bit of background to this. I'm not concerned that they separated their group only a half a mile from camp on a trail they had never been on before.
Okay.
That's okay, because in most cases, the other people are eventually going to show up. So it's the unusual circumstance for those people don't show up. But I was a little uncomfortable that they were laughing so loudly the previous evening that they decided that they were going to start toking up while their friends were missing.
Yeah.
That they would choose to wait until the next morning. And even that's not so bad. But and I don't believe they were going to hike on without their 2 friends. I think they were just venting a frustration that they now have 2 goals. One is to reunite their group, and the other one is to hike a long day.
Okay. So what actually happened in this circumstance? Did they have to helicopter out any bodies or anything? Or
well, let me describe a little bit more what I would do in a circumstance.
Oh, please, yeah.
So we certainly heard them the previous evening, and they had to have heard us talking the previous evening. So if I had somehow separated my group that close to camp, and all of a sudden, after an hour, a half a mile, people should be there within an hour. At that point in time, it would have been dark. I would certainly have sought out the other people in my area to say, I'm having a problem. So, because you don't know whether you might actually be able to have some kind of help in the area. Somebody might have a sat phone. Somebody might be experienced in the area. You just don't know. But the best I think you could do is certainly to try to engage local people to expand the problem, the solution set to the problem.
So if they would have asked that same question that night,
if they had asked that question that night, I would have said, I've been here before. I'm very familiar with the area. The general guidance is you don't search for people at night, but I would have searched for them at night. If it's just a half a mile, the area where this campsite is located is down below the Tonto Rim. So they had separated when they were up on top of the rim and the trail was pretty good, but they had to descend down through breaks in the rim. So there is a possibility that the reason their friends didn't show up is that somebody had got injured descending that more tricky part of the trail. And for just a half a mile, I would have gone back, probably would have taken one of my friends and suggested they send 2 of their friends, and we take whatever we have to take to deal with somebody who might be injured there. So that would have been my general advice, but
that.
That's not what they did. They toked it up instead.
Okay. So what happened the next morning then?
So I basically, when I heard the question, so we're not sure what we should do, I said, well, I'm familiar with the area, and our hiking day today is pretty short, and we're heading in that direction anyway. So they were hiking the trail in one direction, we were going in the opposite direction.
Okay.
So I said, we'll go look, see if we can find those people. My recollection is that the four of them were going to wait there for some period of time. So, that was the plan. And within just a couple minutes of this conversation, as is typical, their two friends self-rescued and came back into camp.
So you basically ran into those people as they were heading into their camp.
And whether my group of three had been there or not, it wouldn't have affected the outcome at all. Sure. I'm convinced the four would have stayed there. The other people would have come into camp, and it would have been just fine. It was nice that the weather was clear. There was no rain. The two people who were out on the trail had only part of a tent because they were sharing equipment with the other folks. It didn't matter that they didn't have a stove to cook their food. You can tolerate a lot of inconvenience for just one night.
Oh, sure. Right. And you and I have had this conversation before that when you separate a group, when you split a group up, only bad things happen, right? It's almost never good things that are when you split up a group.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's actually, I think, worse than that. The vast majority of the time, nothing bad ever happens. So to state it another way, nothing good can happen by separating a group.
Yeah. Something
bad can happen. And unfortunately, it happens so infrequently that people more casually separate groups than they should.
That's true. Yeah. So Dave had a question for you. He said, do you know what happened to them the night before, or did you not stick around for that?
The two gals explained that whatever part of the tent they had, they just threw their pads and sleeping bags out on it and slept under the stars.
But why did they not make it into camp?
They
also toked.
The trail they were hiking on before they had to descend maybe the last third of a mile or so was pretty good. But once they got into that part of the trail, there was no trail. It's cairned and they couldn't follow it. So they just stopped and waited for the sun to come up so that they would have better visibility so that they could find the trail. In other words, it didn't make their problem worse.
I think that's a good call on their part. The
lost gals made a good choice.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting about groups that are separated is as to when Rich and I, when Mike and I and Rich and Sandra were separated, we were separated for an hour or two at least. And I remember not being particularly worried that if I didn't see you until the next morning or until it was safe to go find you, I knew that you guys were self-sufficient and I knew your skill set. And if you know someone's skill set, but if you knew someone that was their very first trip, that's going to change the level of anxiety and potential danger. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why, like, whenever we were noticing the rain, I was like, I have to hang back, because at the time we had that 2-piece tent. I had the fly, he had the tent, he had the poles. So together we didn't have a tent, or apart we didn't have a tent. Together we did.
I think the other thing that's tough is it's hard to make judgment calls when the penalty is going to be a repeat or it's going to be difficult, right? So in our situation, we could have headed back down the way we came, headed back down into Lyle Canyon. Mm-hmm. Like, but who wants to do that? Just like when somebody's lost, like, well, I'm not going to go backwards because then that would be double work. So I'm going to continue forward, hoping I don't get more lost. And then 3 days later, they find them with sticks in their hair.
It's always a challenge when a group separates. So, a lot of folks, and I've heard descriptions of trips that you three have been on. All three of you all carry all of your own stuff. A lot of the trips that I've been on, we actually have common equipment, and so in those scenarios, it's kind of more important to keep the trip together. In fact, I was on a trip several years ago with Kit, who made reference to that trip, where she said that she's on trips where people separate, but she was on this trip with Doug, and Doug kind of kept people closer together. And it's just
right.
I'm not. I make no judgment. People make their own People make their own decisions. I just am nervous when the group gets separated, because if there's a surprise that occurs and everybody's not aware of what the surprise is, people can make different decisions without complete information.
Good point. Right. Okay. Well, we're out of time tonight. Doug, thank you so much for sharing your story. Sandra, Rich, your first time being on the show. Thank you. Appreciate it. Now that I'm calling attention to you, he's going to get self-conscious. I'll wait till the last 30 seconds of it.
Birthday boy.
Yeah. Next week, I'm going to be back with Cynthia's going to join us again, and she's going to talk about her recent Whitney in a day hike trip. So if you've ever considered Whitney in a day, or you're thinking about it, or you just want to know what it's like to try and kill yourself in a day going up to Whitney. Because what's funny is I have no desire to do Whitney in a day. I've done Grand Canyon rim to rim in a day twice. I don't know why it's so different, but for some reason in my mind, it's completely different, but it's not. So.
I think Whitney in a day is harder.
I bet it is. But although I don't know, North Rim's got some altitude, not quite as much. I know it affects my wife. That kills her. So we're going over a hill, and she goes, "I think we got about 700 feet." I'm like, "You are right." Okay, well, we're out of time. Thanks all of you. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody else for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye now.